Welcome to the Comics Cost Metal Podcast, episode 19.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 19. Today, I'm having a chat with KEVIN CUFFE, one half of the dynamic duo of a writing team behind METALSHARK BRO. I had the pleasure of talking to Bob France, the other half of this writing duo, last year, and have been eagerly anticipating getting a chance to talk to Kevin, as writing duos and their dynamics always, provide great interest to me. I had a great time talking to Kevin about METALSHARK BRO and other comics projects, along with, some fun talks about being in a band and some bad gig stories that I'm sure some of you would definitely appreciate hearing. Kevin's band got quite a bit farther than any of my bands ever did. So it was kind of fun hearing some names I actually recognize being involved in some of these stories. Please note that this episode was recorded 2 months ago, so the previews order info for METALSHARK BRO 2 is outdated. But if you go to scoutcomics.com, you can easily order that and some other great titles directly from Scout, and that probably gives them a little bit more of a cut too, so you're helping out everybody at that point. On top of that, I talked to Kevin very quickly today about the Kickstarter for the METALSHARK BRO spin-off, NINJA NUNS Old Habits Die Hard, which is live until mid-September. You'll find that right after we talk about METALSHARK BRO in the podcast. I cut that right in there. And one final thing, if you stick around to the absolute end of the podcast, I put the METALSHARK BRO theme song that I wrote a couple years ago as a little bonus or torture, depending on your taste. Okay, enough with the yapping, let's get to the goods, that is, KEVIN CUFFE.
The coolest thing ever to me when I was I want to say 10 or maybe 9 was when the Transformers movie came out and they had all those songs that were specifically Transformers engineered.
Yes, that was just crazy.
It was super influential for me. So when you say you're going to do comics like that, I get excited. I go, oh, that's really cool because I don't miss music enough to do that, but I think the idea is super dope.
Well, yeah, it's, I've made my way back into music as I was developing my voice or not, whatever you want to call it, for comics. And to me, it just works for my brain to have them intertwined. Like for Emissary, it's, again, heavy metal soundtrack stuff. And I have a post-apocalyptic, set in the 80s thing I'm developing, and that's going to be me going full on John Carpenter, just trying to do everything he did.
You just said the two magic words to almost every
all the synths, occasional guitars here and there, but just really kind of doing stuff.
John Carpenter is the two magic words for me. Almost every movie he did when I was a kid influenced something that we've ended up doing in comics. So
yeah, I never realized how much of an influence his stuff was on me until fairly recently, and I was awesome. It's I was so glad I could just have that, I guess, cornerstone of oh, it's a John Carpenter thing, let me go, because Big Trouble in Little China, The Thing, just all the cool music and stuff.
They Live, Big Trouble in Little China, trying to think of more John Carpenter. Everything up to vampires, I think, because Ghost of Mars came after vampires, and I didn't hate Ghost of Mars, but I didn't love it.
Yeah, Ghost of Mars, it was fine. It's
passable, okay, but it's no Escape from New York. It's no,
I even, to a point, I even enjoy Escape from LA.
I'm in the same boat as you are.
As ridiculous as it is,
I'm okay with Escape from LA. The surfboard is a little too much, but the rest of the movie I'm fine with.
Yeah, so. And good, to be honest, if the CGI for the surfboard was better, or just it was a better scene overall, it would. I remember watching back in the day. HBO would have before, you would have all this behind the scenes stuff beforehand, all these reports online. you would have like the HBO behind the scenes specials about movies and all that. And I guess I speak from a slightly privileged place where my family had cable, but the legality of the cable is in question, to be honest. But you know, I would just watch all these behind the scenes of all these movies, and I just remember the seeing Kurt Russell like just practice basketball for that scene, and like he actually like sunk the full court shot or whatever it was, like in real life, and then they I think they did the camera cut off the clip top of it or something, and they're like, oh, no one's gonna believe that was really you really did it. Just a random thing, like just that draws me out of me. But yeah, it's so that's that's my stuff. But you know music and comics, that's my thing. It's well established on the podcast. That's entirely my jam. So when you guys did Metal Shark Bro, a couple years ago, I was like, oh fuck yeah, I'm all in. And since then, you guys had such success with it. You've had a second volume of Metal Shark Bro, which
that's coming out in June.
Yeah, which I'm excited to get through and check out. So with that coming, like, are you and Bob like collaborating on more stuff again, or are you guys gonna kind of like do your own things for a while? Because I think you guys work really well together as a team.
We pretty much do everything when it comes to writing together, just because we found that it's really easier to bounce ideas off each other, since we're like in similar places but different places at the same time.
Okay.
So like we bounce every silly idea off one another. And yeah, we're doing more with actually like a Metal Shark Bro spinoff. So Metal Shark Bro 2 is I'm not sure if they called it, because I think we called it Island of Misfit Bros, and I think in Diamond it's listed as Assault on Hamzig Island, but I'm not sure. And it all just basically sprung out of like spoilers. If you read the end of the first Metal Shark Bro, we were thinking of a character who would be a good foil to Metal Shark, and why not have it be some other creature that Beelzebub created before he created Metal Shark Bro. And that would be the evilest of all evils, and that is Hamzig, who is a tiny despotic hamster who rules over this particular island in the nether regions of hell.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Hamzig.
And that just came from joking around about Glenn Danzig.
Yes.
Which means he'll probably want to like come to a con and beat us up or something, or threaten to beat us up over the internet, which is fine. Like I mean, well,
if you see any angry Jawas headed your way, then it might be Danzig in disguise.
Yeah, it might be, or like so you have to worry about that to some degree, I guess. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be happy with the reference. If he had more of a sense of humor, he might be, but like we both liked like the Danzig music, but then heard like numerous reports that he was not so nice in person, so we just modeled this like evil small hamster guy after him. So, and a couple other things. So, and that's where the idea came from, and then we just started building off of that into like making another story about the anthropomorphic shark guy from hell.
Well, I'm really glad. I hope the volume 2 like just kicks all forms of ass for you guys in sales, and you get an easy route to the next the spin-off or volume 3 or whatever comes next for the Metal Shark crew.
It's weird that you mentioned that, because the spin-off that we're gonna do is the Ninja Nuns. We're gonna do a book with the Ninja Nuns. So,
oh, okay.
So that's what we decided we were gonna do.
All right, Kevin. So just popping into our previously recorded podcast real quick here to talk about the Ninja Nuns Kickstarter, which just launched on August 3rd and is already funded, which is amazing. So I was initially going to ask you, like, so if this gets funded, like, are you thinking about branching out and doing more side characters, more one-shots for this, like, awesome Metal Shark Bro world you guys have created? Or is this kind of like, we really had a strong idea to do something for this, so we went in that direction, and whatever happens, happens in the future?
When it comes to Metal Shark Bro, we usually like listen to the people, like when we were at Comic-Cons, that would come up to the table and be like, well, I have questions about this particular thing, and the Ninja Nuns were one of the things that people really wanted to know more about. So it was really funny because they're like, you guys didn't give them a whole lot of airtime in Metal Shark Bro, and I'm like, well, that's because like they're like a sideline thing, so they're not like really supposed to have been a main thing in that. We had other plans for them in Metal Shark Bro 2, but then we're like, what if we just do a side Ninja Nuns comic, and that was part of Metal Shark Bro 2, and then like include that if we get to stretch goals. So we started writing some things for that, and then like we didn't get to stretch goals for Metal Shark Bro. We got there, but we just didn't get to any stretch goal type of material. So we had these bases for stories, like outlines for stories lined up, and Bobby's like, we should use these at some point, and I was like, I don't see why we shouldn't. And that's what we did. So when it comes to other things, like the other thing we've been asked about is the band that Metal Shark Bro's human counterpart, or the guy was in that fell into the water. So that's also funny to us because we're like, I never even, we never even considered what happened to the band after that. That was just like a catalyst. So that's really funny that people were like, well, what about the band? What happened to those guys? So there's a lot of things I guess we were just using as jump off points for our main story that people want to know more about. So I would say it depends on how successful the Kickstarter is. Like if we garner like a lot of extra money from this, it'll all go into making more comics and doing other things and paying artists and editors and stuff like that. So if there are more stories that people want to see, I would just advise like back the Kickstarter for any amount, because then that lets us know there's
Awesome.
interest. It lets Scout know that
Yeah.
there's interest in doing more stuff. So like it helps us too, because Scout will be like, we'll greenlight something quicker if like as soon as we said we were going to do a Ninja Nuns book, they're like, we're on that. We want that. And it was like, okay.
So, well, that's awesome. I hope you guys have already met your funding goal a few days in, and well, you guys were funded like in less than a day, was it?
It was like 8
Jesus.
hours. Yeah.
So
it was crazy.
So well deserved, obviously. So what was it like getting in art and stories and stuff with not Walter providing the visual landscape of the Metal Shark Bro universe? It had to be awesome and exciting. Were you also maybe a little trepidatious about like, oh man, I hope that this captures the spirit of it, or is it just like, no, we picked awesome people, we know this is going to be awesome?
It was a little of both at first, but all the artists were really respectful of Walter's designs, so they all really wanted to see Walter's designs, and they were all most of them were already familiar with the book, at least had some idea. If they only, I think one of the artists that we picked didn't have any knowledge of the Ninja Nuns, but they knew about the book.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't know about the Ninja Nuns. They had never read the book, so we sent PDFs off to all the artists so they could at least read the first book to see what the content was going to be like, because the content for Ninja Nuns is very similar to Metal Shark Bro. It's just from a different angle. So if you think about it, like we're doing crazy stories about the flying spaghetti monster, Mary Magdalene's skull, and like the nuns attending a Comic-Con. So those are all the things that we did in there, just because it was all like we were trying to do more stories, like the nuns attending Comic-Con's only 2 pages, and Angela Sprecher drew that, and she did a book with Bob and I when we first started doing comics together, called Full Moon Fredo, which was a all ages book, which was like difficult for me, even though I am a parent. At the end of the day, I don't always think in all ages terms when it comes to writing comics. So going into it, it was kind of like that. Like I have to think in different terms, and just let the artists have fun with what they want to do, as long as they stick, like they pay respect to Walter's original design. I think, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Bob was too. And then we showed everything to Walter before we actually decided to launch the Kickstarter, so he could look at it if there's anything he didn't like art wise, or thought that they weren't close enough. But he was cool with everything, because Walter's pretty laid back. Walter's a really laid back dude. So he was just kind of like, oh yeah, these all look good.
Awesome.
And then that's
Cool.
it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, one more question, and then I'll let you get back to as you told me, you're shipping out a whole bunch of Metal Shark books from your previous Kickstarters. So
Today's my shipping day.
you guys
Yeah.
are just rolling and rolling and rolling nonstop, and it's awesome. So one last question is, you guys always have some really cool tiers for the Kickstarters. Is there any highlights that you think that people would really dig and would really love to get, to jump on?
I think that any physical tier with the book is going to put you in the running for the stretch goals that we're talking about, which we just posted up on the Kickstarter website today. So it's up there as to what we are planning to do for stretch goals for I think it's every $500. We're expanding into different areas. That way, people know that they're going to get a little bit more. And that's always nice with a Kickstarter when, this is what we planned for to cover, printing and shipping, and then we get to do a little more. That's always nice for us too as creators, because it makes us flex those creative muscles to think of other things to do, which we weren't even expecting to fund the first day. We were expecting it to maybe be like a week or two. And that was where Bob, Chaz, and I were living in the realm of maybe this funds in a week or two. So to have to think about it a day after launch was really weird, because it was almost like emergency council. I mean, it was like, what do we do now? And that's where that was, to be honest, and not trying to be funny about it, but it was just like, we didn't expect that to happen. So what do we do? So we have to do something. So we're going to offer more art, more prints. Everybody always wants more art with Kickstarter. So a lot of artists have come forward to do extra pinup / prints that people may want. So there's like Vince Kakua, who has done some work with Image and Oni and had a webtoon. Matt Harding, who's done those two things, and he's done some work with what was that book? It was the Not Forgotten anthology. Paul Gorey, who is one of my longtime friends and collaborators. So I did my first comic with Paul. Paul always is really cool about giving us art for these things. Josh Hood, who did We Can Never Go Home. He's doing some art for it. So it's just a matter of where we get to in stretch goals, because as an artist yourself, artists like money. I mean, it
helps.
makes
it makes things a little bit easier to do the fun things.
The idea. So. Yeah, artists like money, and we don't mind giving money to artists. If people are giving us money, then we're going to try and put it back into the book and put it in places to where you get more art, you get more books, you get more. And we have a special surprise stretch goal at 6K, which I can't talk about while we're recording, but I'll tell you about once you turn the recording off, and then you'll be like, oh wow, awesome. So that's basically what we plan to do with it. So it's been a lot of fun. Coming up with like different things to like try and give to people. So the best tier, I would say, I don't know, I'm biased, I could say the Word Bros tier, the most expensive one. No, but that's just because we wanted people to come on the podcast and just to talk about wrestling and comics and dumb stuff that Bobby and I like to talk about.
Which having been on the Word Bros podcast and having both talked to you and Bob on my own podcast, that's something anyone should jump on to get the chance to talk to you guys.
It's about time for you to come on the Word Bros podcast, Don. It's about time. We should just have you.
I was on a couple years ago.
You were.
Yeah, we're doing the Kickstarter of mine that completely, well, not completely tanked, but I completely overshot. In terms of like when doing a hardcore, it's not important. What's important is Ninja Nuns on Kickstarter, already funded, awesome tiers. Get those print editions, push up that goal, get those stretch goals, because I want to hear what that $6,000 one is, because I'm going to hear it, but you're going to want to hear it, and you're not going to hear it unless you hit that 6,000. So Kevin, thanks for talking about the Kickstarter. We're going to go back to our previously recorded podcast where I'm probably trying to convince you to do something musically or talk about band stuff. So thanks, Kev. And then again,
thank
Kickstarter. Metal, what was it? Just Ninja Nuns on Kickstarter?
Ninja Nuns, Bad Habits Die Hard.
The greatest byline like ever.
It's the dumbest, but we're cool with it.
All right, do it.
We had another thing that we were doing, so because we don't get a chance to talk about things that are done that we're not putting out yet because of various things besides COVID. There's other factors, like we were trying to pitch a project. So we're doing a thing called Dust Pirates with Tony Gregory, who did some work for Vault. And that's more of like an action, a buddy cop action movie, but fantasy movie, all like rolled together. So it'd be like if you took like some of the older stuff that you would see on TV, like Errol Flynn pirate stuff, and then mix that with like a buddy cop movie, and then like a weird dystopian fantasy world. So
that sounds awesome.
It's really weird. It's a really weird book. It's totally different than Metal Shark. It's not like comedy. It's more action, like and more action in like a 80s, 90s vibe, where and not like a one-liner Arnold Schwarzenegger action, but more like, if you remember those days when you were a kid, you would turn on the TV and like most of the time there'd be like an action movie on, like, you know, it'd be Chuck Norris or Arnold Schwarzenegger or like Mario Van Peebles, and they were like all starring in these action movies that are like the tough cop and all that stuff. So we wanted to take those kind of tropes and turn it on its ear, and then make a story about friendship. So that's what we did.
That sounds awesome. And Tony's a fantastic artist, so that's, you know, that's even more of a enticement than this story, which I think sounds really cool. Is it?
He crushed the art. Tony's amazing. He was super, super fun to work with because he took anything that we put on the page and just made it like a million times better. So like anything that we were imagining when he was just doing concept drawings, he's like, what about this? Or what about this? Or like I would be getting, he's on Mountain Time and I'm on Eastern Standard Time. So I'd be getting text messages at like 3 a.m. and it's like a couple hours before I have to be up for actual work. And so I would be getting up to these text messages from Tony where when I'd be messaging him back, he'd already be asleep. So a lot of our communications were done like through texting. And it was super funny because like I would text him back and be like, I wonder what he's going to do. And then I get that when he would wake up on his side of the world, there would be a picture attached. So it was pretty interesting because as a writer, it's always fun to see pictures from an artist and you're like, oh wow, that's way cooler than I ever thought about it being.
I hope they get that feeling one day. I definitely want to write for other people. I'm just trying to get comfortable writing for myself. So as a writer, do you find, because Dust Pirates sounds very different from Metal Shark, is there like a huge shift in the way you have to think or approach the story, or is it just what comes naturally with a new idea, a new concept?
It kind of depends on what it is you're trying to write. That's what I would honestly say, because it's more like when we sit down to write Metal Shark Bro, it's more like how utterly ridiculous can we be and still have a story, like a cohesive story to tell. When we sit down to write Dust Pirates, we already knew the beginning, middle, and end of it in outline form, roughly, and what we were trying to do with it. So it wasn't like how ridiculous it could be. It was like what keeps, you know, this theme throughout the book of between these two characters, because it's based on two guys that were actually pirates. They're actually real pirates, Black Sam Bellamy and Tough Hand Hendrik Quintor. Now, some of the details of that have been changed because, like, the way we present it is Quintor is actually his like first mate. And in reality, I don't think that was the case. But Black Sam Bellamy was an actual real pirate, and he was the captain of a ship called the Whydah, Whydah, I think, which was like I believe it was a cargo float. I think that's what they call it, like the type of ship. But I don't remember because it's been a while since I researched and like found these guys and was like, it would be cool to take these real life pirate guys and create a fictional story around these characters that were real, that supposedly died in a storm off of Cape Cod. One guy Quintor was hung, and Sam supposedly drowned. So I said, well, what if neither of them drowned like that day? Like, and he didn't get hung. Like, what if he was on the ship and they got transported to Atlantis, but Atlantis isn't what they've heard it was, like through all the sea dog, tales that they hear out on the ocean. What if it was completely different? And so that's where the whole concept came from. Like, what if you and your friend were trapped in a place that you'd heard all these stories about, and it's supposed to be like this, like paradise for pirates and stuff like that, where there's, endless amounts of gold and stuff like that, but it's not that. So.
Well, I was sold just on the initial pitch of it, but hearing more about it, I'm like, I can't wait till this comes out. This sounds really cool. I'm kind of a mark for taking revisionist, like doing kind of slightly revisionist stuff, but not so much like, obvious stuff, but like taking like, oh, these were some legit pirates back in the day, but here's some crazy shit that, could have happened.
Yeah, alt history stuff is basically where the idea came from. It was actually funny because part of it was because I had been watching. Have you ever seen Black Sails?
No, I've heard a lot of great things about it though.
It's supposed to be like a prequel. I didn't realize this, but it's supposed to be a prequel to Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island.
Oh,
so I didn't know that, and then I was like, well, that's fun, and I like pirates, but it wasn't supposed to be about pirates. But then I was like, what if you did like an alt history version of that? Because some of these pirates that they have in Black Sails are legit pirates, like Calico Jack's a real pirate, and Blackbeard's in it, and Charles Vane was a real pirate, and like they're all in the background in Black Sails. They all play their own little parts. And those pirates were actual pirates, but then they're interacting with the fictional pirates from Stevenson's world. Billy Bones and Long John Silver and Captain Flint are all fictional characters. So it's interesting to see on the show, like these fictional people that Stevenson invented interacting with the real life pirates. So I thought that was kind of cool the way they did that. Anne Bonny's probably my favorite. The thing on the show that made me think that the show was the coolest was watching Anne Bonny on the show. I was like, oh, she's the best.
Awesome.
And I think the actress's name is Clara Paget.
Okay. No, I've heard plenty of things about Black Sails, but I've not. I think it's a Showtime show. Is that correct?
I think it's a Starz show. It's
Stars.
on Hulu.
Okay, that sounds about right.
If you have Hulu, you can watch it.
No, like Hulu's like the one service we don't have. It's like, it's not to get on a thing, but it's just as bad as just buying cable channels at this point. So it's like
it is almost as expensive. I will agree with you there.
Pick and choose. No, that sounds really awesome. So I'm really glad to see you guys kind of branching out from, not that I thought you guys would only do stories like Metal Sharks. I know Bob's done plenty of other things, but I like seeing this direction you guys are taking, and just this again, the story sounds really interesting and really cool, and it's something that's if I'm mistaken, you mentioned earlier, it's something that you guys are waiting to get released in the next year
we're
or
waiting
so?
to be able to pitch. Yeah.
Okay. Pitch. Sorry. So yeah, I don't see anyone in the right mind not picking this up, because
I don't know about that, but I would say that is largely due to the other people that work on the book besides Bob and I. It's like Tony does the pencils and the inks, and Marissa Louise is doing the coloring.
Oh, she's great.
She's amazing.
A great colorist.
She's amazing. She made the book look great.
I think that if you look at the genres, I think the kind of the pirate genre is not really super represented in comics, and I think Top Cow has a pirate book coming out with relatively soon and stuff like that. So I could definitely see like an influx of that kind of thing, because it's seemingly untapped. Because when's the last time they were really like, what's like the most notable pirate comic? Like the one that was inside the Watchmen.
I mean, maybe the The new one that Marvel's doing with Conan, Belit.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's technically a pirate comic. And I think CrossGen had one way back in the early 2000s.
They did. Good Lord, he brought up
Sojourn,
CrossGen.
was it?
He went there.
Well, I'm not familiar with a lot of the material, but I'm familiar with the story.
It's funny because if you have any, like, I don't know if it's Dollar Tree or Dollar General. It's one of the two, like, dollar stores. If you have any of those up your way, but you can buy like a 3-pack of comics for like $2 or $1 at these things, and they're like cross-gen comics are in there. So really? It's pretty funny.
We have both. I don't frequent them, but that's just might have to go in there and pick up some like 20-year-old cross-gen comics.
It's crazy because the art on one of them that I got, like, I had no idea, but it was Brett Booth art, really? And he's done all kinds of cool stuff like Flash and stuff like that. But this is like at the I want to say at the beginning or like close to the beginning of his career. Like, I'm not positive.
He started with Homage Studios and Jim Lee and all that, and in Image in the early mid 90s. He started there because I remember he worked on that character Backlash was the character he worked on. Mm-hmm. And he did a few other things, and he was doing a bunch of stuff. He worked on, I want to say he worked on the Heroes Reborn Fantastic Four stuff too.
Oh, cool.
After Jim Lee stepped away after doing the first couple issues, he's done other stuff. He's been around for quite a while.
But there was some cross-gen comic that he did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the cover. He did the interiors and everything too. So it's pretty amazing because I found that at one of the dollar stores one day. Like, I don't remember what I took my kid in there for, but we basically, like, while he was looking at other stuff, I was like, oh, there's like comics here for like $1. And like you said, I'm a mark. So I'm going to be like, well, even if out of the 3-pack, 2 of them are awful, one of them has Brett Booth art. So like, it's a win for $1. Like, you got me.
Well, CrossGen had like a crazy like roster of artists. Steve McNiven started there. They had Jim Chung. They had I don't know if Greg Land was tracing Greg Land at that point or if he was still. Well, yeah, I'm not the hugest fan of the guy now, but I think a lot of it comes from knowing that he, when he was doing stuff for DC like Nightwing and stuff, the dude like has skills, like, but I guess he found a way to pump out page after page after page, and people love his art and people buy it. So who am I to say nil about it?
I'm going to be that weird guy that rides the fence on this one and says it's probably because sometimes it's quicker and like, and I know definitely. You're an artist.
I mean, so. I totally get, comics are the weird intersection between passion and creative like outlets and also commercial art. Like, no artist is going to say, unless they have the carte blanche to do whatever they want, they're not going to say like, yes, I had all the time I wanted to work on this page. I was able to do everything I wanted to do. It's exactly how I wanted it, So you have to find your happy medium there. So, and again, I this isn't about him, but this is about Kevin and the stuff you're working on.
I have a hard time talking about that guy. He sucks.
Well,
I'm kidding.
I think he's pretty cool.
He's all right.
And one of the cool things that you might not want me to bring up, you're
gonna bring it up anyway. So I'm
gonna bring it up anyway because it's in the title of the show, Kevin. I have to bring it up. So you've told me in the very beginning of the 2000s you were in a metal band, and you actually played an Ozfest. Was it like a few dates? Is it one date?
It was a couple. It was
the
big day out.
Band.
The big day out. It was the second. It wasn't the main stage, so
doesn't matter.
And that was fun. I mean, we did a bunch of things. We also did the big day off for Ozfest. Like we played a couple shows on the East Coast, a couple dates for that, and then we were the opening act with the band that plays while the house lights are on. Mm-hmm. For other bands, and we were opening for bands that you might have heard of them. So a couple bands from I think Ultra Spank is from California,
Yeah,
but
I've
it
heard of
was like
them.
Ultra Spank, Nothing Face,
Mhm.
Disturbed, and another band, Mudvayne,
Okay.
on the big day off, and we were the band that played while the house lights were on, right, like 5 of the shows.
What was that experience like? Was it just kind of, were you treated kind of like the, the cast-offs, or like, go
No,
play
actually,
your
you
stuff?
get
And
treated like a rock star too,
really?
because you're kind of in there. It's weird because when you're the opening act for bigger acts, the bigger acts like Disturbed don't want to interact with you, and I'm speaking particularly to like Dave Draymond, like he was kind of aloof and above it all. Um, but the guitar player, I think his name was Dan. He was
Yeah.
super cool, super
Yeah,
nice.
that's what I've heard. I've heard that for, like, I've heard stories that, the singer Dave Jermaine, he's not necessarily a jerk to people, but he's just really kind of just like keeps to himself. And it's just kind of like not there.
He was kind of a little jerky, like
Well, no,
I'm cooler than you guys.
listen, it's I've seen his Twitter. I believe it. But I've heard like everyone else in the band was just like super cool dudes.
Yeah, the guitar player and the bass player. The bass player had like a nickname.
Fuzz.
Man, this is a long time ago
His name
now.
was
So
Fuzz, I think.
Buzz, yes,
Yeah, I think it was
that sounds
Fuzz.
right. So like those two dudes were super nice, and like they had beers with us. They shared, like, because the headlining bands, they like, people don't realize in the rock world, it's kind of like the comics world. They get all kinds of stuff for free.
Yeah.
So like the venues give them drinks for free. There's stuff that's on their rider, so they get like the catering, the free food. They get the free beer. Like, and those two dudes were like, hey man, you guys take whatever you want, like whatever you need. And other bands on those big day off was Nothing Face was on there as well. And they were super nice to us too. But like the bigger bands, like we didn't really interact with the two headliner bands too much. Okay. So I can't give you any dirt on them because
but it's not necessarily dirt. Just kind of, as someone who's playing live experience is pretty much starts and ends at like crappy bars. I was just kind of interested in hearing the experience of an opening band and what kind of treatment you got and stuff like that. Not necessarily any kind of dirt.
I was kidding. It's pretty much the same. It's pretty much like playing in a crappy bar to people who aren't drunk yet. Because you're playing while like the lights are still on in the venue. Like you're the first band you set up in front of everyone else. The drum kits for the other bands are already set up behind
so
you.
Have like 1 foot of space.
You don't have
in
a lot of
you.
stage room. The people that do get to hear you, if you catch their attention, if you're lucky enough to catch their attention, like might buy some of your merch and you might be able to eat the next day. Like, so that's pretty
just
much
like comics.
It's pretty much the same.
What was the worst gig you ever had?
Wow. I had to say it would have been like at a nightclub in probably Norfolk, Virginia, and we played to like 5 people. But you still have to play. Like you're slated to play, so you play. Oh
man, yeah, it's so no huge big, just a really crappy turnout and just weren't feeling it type of situation.
It was only like 5 people on like a Wednesday night. And at that time, I think we were the headliner, so it's not like we got to play and then just go home. Which, like, it sucks because most of the time you want to like support the other bands, but if you're having a night where there's like 5 people in the bar, like it's not that you don't want to support the other bands, but you're just like, man, I have a day job. I have to go home. I have other things I have to do.
I'm assuming the other bands are like, dude, I get it. Like, just it's fine. See you guys later.
But we were like the headliners at that time for like, local stuff. So like, you have to stay until 2 pretty much, close to 2, 1, you play at like, your slot's like midnight to 1. So, I mean, you're pretty much stuck there with those 5 people are getting just trashed on Wednesday at a bar in Norfolk. So like, and one of those guys is probably in the Navy, and that's not like a slight on Norfolk, it's just basically the way it is because the Navy bases and stuff there. So like you're playing to like a Navy guy.
I live right
some
by a
other
naval
guy
base,
that's
so
just
yeah, I
getting
get
drunk because he just got off of work, and like the bar staff.
I live right by a naval base, so I get it. Whenever we're doing anything, there's always a couple Navy guys hanging around. So I was hoping not to wish anything bad on you, but I was kind of hoping you had like a worse bad gig story than I do. But
Oh, what's your bad gig story? I got to hear this one.
It's entirely our own fault. So we were playing at this place called, I think, the Crazy Horse or Bad Horse in Chicago. It was this bar, and to get into it, you had to walk through this taco joint. And it was like right in the middle of like a, hip section, I guess, or just like an active section for like, music and things like that and young people. And about a week or two before, my singer guitar player, he tore his ACL playing flag football for whatever god awful reason he was doing that for. And he was just completely miserable. Our band was like at our wits' end because we got into this weird thing where, we played a few shows and we kept like trying to write more and more new songs as opposed to just having the songs we have and just trying to find more shows. So it just became this weird thing of like we were stretching ourselves thin creatively, I guess.
Right.
Because we weren't kind of happy with what we were making, even though the group of songs we had to start off with, we were all very happy about. So we were kind of like, things were dissolving. Our lead guitar player, second guitar player had like joined another band, but he's like, oh, I'm going to do both bands. But there's kind of like a lot of tension because he did that. Our drummer was just kind of like, I think he was fine. He was like the only one of us throughout the whole thing who was just like, yeah, everything's fine. And then that night, I had before the show, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have some tacos because I gotta wait to go on or whatever. And they give me this hot sauce. They're like, oh, you gotta try this hot sauce. It's habanero sauce. I'm like, well, how much do I put on? And the guy's like, are you Mexican? I'm half Mexican. I'm like, oh, I'm half Mexican. He's like, but I like hot stuff, as long as it's not gonna like, tear up my intestines or anything like that. And he's like, yeah, put the whole thing on. I'm like, okay. So I put the whole thing on. The guy was obviously fucking with me. It was like, probably, it wasn't so much, it was like excruciating, but I started sweating real bad. And then I made the terrible mistake of wiping my forehead with my hand.
Oh no.
And I had some sauce on my fingers and it got in my eye. And I was like, that's when I was like, oh, So then I'm like brushing my eye out, and the guy's like coming up to me like saying sorry. He's like bringing me like horchatas and like to try to like. I'm like, it's my eye. It's like not the, it's not my throat. It's my mouth. It's my eye. It's fucking burning. So I finally got that subsided like 10 minutes before we had to go on, and we go on, and it's just like my eye's burning. I'm just like over it. Our guitar player is just like over it, and we're just like, the second guitar player, he's just like, I don't even think he was like paying attention half the time. I think he kept tugging it was just like such a like, we didn't want to be there. We were all pissed off and miserable, and everyone there was just like, okay. And like as soon as we finished a set, like we just like blew out of there. And it was
there was a time now that you're saying that, it does remind me of a time where we played in North Carolina. I can't remember the name of the place we played, but when we used to play in North Carolina, we had established enough of following in North Carolina to where we had places to crash, and we would show up there before we went to the show, and we were crashing at this girl's house. She had a house that was like 20 miles or so away from the club, and she was working the club. She worked at that club that we were playing in, and so she's like, I'm gonna take you guys. Well, she didn't say you guys. I said you guys because I'm from New York. But she said, I'm gonna take y'all to this place. They got the best burgers in town. So we go there. We eat the burgers and stuff. And this is earlier on in the afternoon on a Friday, I believe. And we're supposed to play. I think we're playing that night. Since we're not at home, we're not the headliner. We're playing at I think the 9 to 10 o'clock slot, which is a good slot. technically, because that's when the bar starts to fill up and it's not emptying out. For an out-of-town band, it's a pretty good slot. But we got there around, I want to say 3 or 4. We went to eat the burgers. Around 6, my stomach starts feeling awful from the burger. And I'm just like, oh God, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I might have got food poisoning. I'm just going to lay down for like an hour before we go. I wake up, I'm still feeling awful. We get there. We're setting up for sound check. And I was lucky enough to have like a wireless microphone, as I was like the singer / screamer for the band. So I remember doing sound check and feeling like I had to vomit. So I'm like, I do not want to vomit while I'm doing sound check. So I remember we were playing our set, like not so long after we do sound check. And I just can't control the urge to have to vomit anymore. And in the middle of a song, I run full speed outside with the wireless mic in my hand and around the corner of the building and start puking my brains out while holding the mic up in the air, one hand braced against the wall, mic's up in the air, and I'm just straight vomiting and then singing the part after, and then vomiting some more and then singing the part because I could hear the band from outside against the wall. And I'm just like, oh, this is the worst.
All right, you win. Win.
So it might be worse than yours.
No, band dissolving and hot sauce in the eye. That's nothing because you're having to scream after your, bile and everything's just coming up your throat.
It was awful. It was awful.
Oh,
it was because the worst part about vomiting and trying to sing is like
I can't imagine to be any like less bad part than this. But yeah, go ahead,
the worst part about it is like the citrusy aftertaste of the Smirnoff Ice that you're vomiting up as well, because you tried to like kill the urge to vomit in the first place. You're like I tried to resist it the entire time instead of just going, you know what, I should probably just throw up and get it over with.
Yeah.
And then when you're projectile vomiting on the side of the building, like using the building to actually hold you up, like people think you're drunk, but it's not that glamorous at that point. You're not Randy Rhoads or anybody cool on the side of the building vomiting up hamburger and Smirnoff Ice. You're just awful at that minute.
Oh, jeez. So I can see why you decided to just pivot into comics. So from what I recall, you said there's like no real trace of you guys on the internet.
No, there's no way you can hear anything. Because I've looked before to see, because people asked for stuff. There's some friends of mine who are on like Facebook and stuff who bring it up every now and then, or will post a picture of our CDs or talk about band times, because I was in a band after the one that was on the record label called like When Heroes Die. That was just a way more experimental type thing where it was like more like a fusion of different kinds of music, which was a lot of fun to do. And people have like a couple of those songs that were like not mixed and stuff like that. So it doesn't sound the best. So there's some of that might be floating around somewhere, but the other stuff is definitely the stuff from Slayground and Six Step South, which was the same band. They just changed our name. I think that's gone completely. I've tried to find it and it's just not there. And I was like, oh, that's kind of good in a way. I don't want anybody hearing some of this stuff.
Well, what kind of metal were you guys doing? Was it more nu metal-y? Was it more?
It was
because that's around the time like stuff like Hatebreed and stuff like that. That was kind of coming up too. So was it more of a, It was kind of a mix
of like. At the time, my favorite stuff coming out was like Machine Head and like the Deftones and like Fear Factory, a lot of that like California Bay Area stuff I really liked. Okay. So it was like a mix of those things without being a mix of those things, because it was still its own thing. But like if you had to compare it to something, it would be like Fear Factory and the Deftones had a baby.
Oh, so that definitely sounds interesting.
It was definitely weird, like, and then the band after that was even more weird because it was more like the guitar player, one of the guitar players played synth and guitar, the other guitar player played keyboard and guitar, the bass player also played another instrument. The drummer could sing, so we all could do multiple things. And like, it was fun playing in that band because like there's a lot of textures and musical ideas going around that were like different from different places, because one of the guitar players was really into metal. The other guy was really into screamo. The bass player was really into like funk, and the drummer Evan was just like primarily like a rock drummer, but like into metal. So it gave the band like a really weird metal-y edge without being just straight up metal, but it wasn't like new metal. It was like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like just a harder rock fusion punk thing. It was definitely a weird thing.
I think there's a lot of stuff, not to say it wasn't original, but it's like that kind of like really weird fusions happening around that time with a lot of bands.
Have you ever heard of a band? I know a band that people used to say that when Heroes Black sounded like. Have you ever heard of a band called He Is Legend?
Yes.
Yeah, their first album, like people would say that it was very reminiscent to what we were doing, because it was like singing, screaming, like punkish riffs, and then like metally riffs, but then some of the stuff could have been considered like post-punk, pop-punk stuff. So it was really a weird mix of things.
Okay. Yeah, I know the name. I couldn't tell you what they sounded like, but I've seen that name flitter around a lot of metal websites and stuff like that. So I'll have to get my Slayground fix or introduction vicariously through that, I guess.
The weird thing is, I don't even have a CD. So people will ask sometimes if I still have a CD or anything, because the guy who did our CD, his name was Drew Mazurik. And then the CD we were doing for the label was supposed to be produced by David Ellefson, who's the bass player for Megadeth.
Yeah. Oh shit. Really?
So, because he was doing production work at the time, he had his own production studio based out of Scottsdale, Arizona at the time, and he was flying in to Norfolk and flying back out to Scottsdale and stuff like that for the label stuff. But like, it's weird because the reason why I don't enjoy talking about it, because it feels weird when you're like, or like, to me, now this is how I feel about it. This other people may beg to differ, but like if you're signed for like 18 months and you're not signed anymore, were you ever really signed in the first place? Because all you really did was kind of tour and record a couple things. So,
well, here's what I can liken that to. I wouldn't call myself a quote unquote runner, but I run a lot. I've done a lot of races. I've done like 11 half marathons, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, you did a half marathon." But I'm like, "Yeah, but I didn't do like a full one." And I'm like, I didn't really I wasn't like in like even the top 100 in my age group for finishing. Like I just did it, but in the end, it's still something more than a lot of other people have ever done or attempted. So it's like, yeah, sure, you guys were signed for 18 months, you say, and things kind of fizzled out or whatever happened, but you got to a certain point that a lot of people don't get to. And that's definitely not anything to be, negative about, even though I'm sure, there might be negative things tied to things not working and things like that. But, you can be proud of it. You can be, as long as you're not like the guy who's like, I was signed once. I think that's probably what you're kind of like railing against, that the guy holding on to that one little thing that, may be kind of cool, but it's like, all right, dude. Yeah, but you're not now, and you. And
right, I'm that guy in the gym who's like, I used to bench 300 because I'm like, nobody cares what you used to bench. Like, what are you benching like right now? So yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's kind of like that, or whatever.
You're a humble enough guy, and a well-spoken enough guy to where you're not going to be like, it would never. I would be hard pressed to think it would ever come across like you're touting some huge laurel over everybody, as opposed to like, No, this was a kind of a neat thing, you know, that happened to me. Like, because
I think it's silly. I try not to bring it up because it's like, it's what I used to do instead of like making comics. Making comics is what I do. So like, it's weird because people sometimes ask like, oh, do you ever think about going back to music? And I'm like, no, I'm in my 40s now. Like that's a young man's game. Like you have to be in your 20s to like have any shot at that. Like, and I'm not saying that to discount people who are doing it in the latter years of their life. I just decided that at some point I went, when it comes to like bands, you're either pulling four very talented but lazy people up a hill because they're not ambitious enough to do it for themselves because some musicians just want to make music, or you're taking on multiple roles that you don't get paid for, and you're just kind of doing it because no one else wants to do it. There's a lot of like pushing for other people to try to go in the same direction as you were. And with comics, I feel like you're on a team. So it's the same sort of thing, like working in a team, but you don't have to pull anybody else up a hill. Like if somebody else in comics isn't, doing their part of the work or like coming through or whatever, then it's easy to figure out which part of the wagon isn't moving. Wherein with a band, it's a lot harder to tell because there's like more moving parts and it's more intricate. So if that makes sense, if that analogy makes any sense at all.
No, I totally get that. And also, you kind of found your other muse, your other outlet, and it's, I think there's kind of this thing where people, they find their creative outlet, they find the thing, the passion, the thing they love doing. And we're kind of told like, oh, if you find that, you got to market it. You got to, it's got to become your job. It's got to become your career. And it doesn't have to be. Like, you can just pay your bills with a regular job. And, my longstanding belief for many, many years now is, I would love to make comics full time. That my main income, and live off of that. But I'm also cool if I have a job that pays my bills and gives me health insurance and takes that stress off my back, and I have time to make my comics on top of that, which, is itself.
With comics, for me, it was weird because it was like, I just want to make comics that I personally want to make. Like, hopefully people want to read them, but if they don't, that's cool too. Like, I'm okay with that.
No one's...
So it's different from music in that way too, because music is, something that you like when you say like, when you were in a band, you're like, oh, I'm in a band. And then people are like, oh, like, what do you play? And you'd be like, what did you play? Bass? Guitar?
Yeah, I played bass.
You play bass. So like, oh, I play bass in this band, but you can also play guitar too. So it's like, it's interesting because like, you'd be like, oh, I do this. And they're like, oh, cool. Like, and then you let them hear your CD and they're like, like, for example, like a non-musician, like some people won't know what a bass sounds like. So like, oh, like, I don't know what part's yours. Wherein with comics, it's more like you do the comics and like, no matter what part you played in the comics, they're all important. And not to say that bass players aren't important, because I started out on bass, so like I feel your pain.
Half of us.
The only reason why I started singing was because I came into a room one day and decided to like pretend to be Phil Anselmo on a microphone while they were doing stuff, which probably wasn't the best idea. And they were like, "You're the singer now." I was like, "What? No, I don't want to do that. I have to spend all this money on bass equipment." So to bring it back to what I was talking about with comics, it's more like what you're saying is, you want to do it for yourself, and sometimes in music, you start off doing it for yourself, and then you like get a little taste of what this other thing looks like. With comics, it's not like that. It's like, yeah, I just want to do the stories I want to do. I don't care if nobody reads this other story, but like, I'm just going to do it because it's a story and I have to get it out, versus I'm going to do it because like the guitar player wrote this song and it's about his girlfriend and like, so we have to do this song. It's completely different thing. All entirely a different way to use your creativity, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I can say for myself that that's probably why I pivoted to playing more guitar. Because back when I was in a band, I didn't really contribute a lot to the writing. I tried to, but my ideas were either not a right fit for what we were doing, or they just weren't any good. And then, as I've gotten older and as I've wanted to express myself, I picked up the guitar more, and I learned how to program drums. I learned how to record myself and do all these things. So now, I don't rely on anybody else. And just like the comics I'm doing now, I'm not relying on anybody else, and it's a great feeling. Though obviously it's not for everyone. I was, I guess, lucky enough to, get to a point to where I can do the things I want to do how I want to do them. Because I know there's a lot of people who,
Right.
may have
And
more skill
see,
than me or
that's-
more talent
that's-
than me, but they don't exactly have the time or the equipment or the, lifestyle where they can, produce their things they want to produce, and they're kind of stuck where they're stuck. So, I'm appreciative that I can do that. So, I could, I'd like to tell you like, hey man, never say never about music, but, that's not your path. That was my path. So, but I'm glad you're making comics because I like your comics a lot. And I'm excited to, read more of your comics and the comics you want to do and the comics you're doing with Bob. And, so it's, not a total wash, I guess.
No, and I think that path that you're taking, the cartoonist path, is like awesome. Because like if I could draw myself, like it would be so much easier to do. But I also enjoy the teamwork aspect of it. Like I enjoy like working with an artist because you hear like lots of horror stories and everything, not just music but comics too, of people being hard to work with. And luckily for Bob and I, like we haven't had any problems with anyone that we worked with, like artists, or we haven't had issues with anyone being like egotistical or weird or too much to handle or anything. Everybody's pretty much in it for the team effort and wants to make the best story they can, which is great, which is like a lot of fun. I mean, I'm sure eventually one day there will be a thing where someone won't be as much fun to work with. But at this point, like I haven't had that. And like, I'd love to do like stuff like you're talking about, like cartoonist stuff, like on my own, but I don't have the drawing chops. So like, it's one of those things where I'm like, that's cool. I don't mind like the team aspect of it in comics because it feels more like a team than being in a band did for me. Being awesome. A band feels like four people pulling in different directions all at once, and you kind of have to like gather all the horses and pull them together. In comics, like you might be pulling in different directions at first, or you might think that your idea is really great, but then like I said, you get a sketch from an artist and you're like, oh, that's so much better than anything I would have thought of. Like this is way cooler than where my head was at. So like you just kind of bring that into your workflow and you make it work. Well, and you come together and make things better together.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, the difference between like making a song with people versus making a comic with a comic, you're dealing more with, I guess, concepts. Like you're describing a character and then the artist is interpreting that character and adding their own flares to it. As opposed to like as a guitar player saying like, here's this guitar part, and you're like, oh, what if you do this in the end? But it's more of a concrete thing. It's like almost, and not to say that this doesn't work or can't work, because I'm sure there's been scenarios where it has, but like it'd be somewhat of the equivalent of an artist coming to you saying, here, I drew this character, write a story for him. And then you're like, oh, I had this idea, this thing happened, like maybe he has like the scar over this guy. He's like, no, I don't want, no. So it's like you're handicapping creative input when it's kind of like that. Again, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio because I'm sure there's
no, I totally get what you're saying.
And there's totally bands where
it's like that, yeah.
And there's totally bands, and I'm sure even comics where you have the people kind of having that tension between each other and kind of pulling apart. But sometimes it works. Sometimes like that, it creates this perfect little bubble of tension between everything where everything is kind of locks into place. But that's incredibly rare. And but no, I totally get. I've worked, as a team with comics, and it's great. I worked where I'm sent a script and I draw the script and that's it. I've had, in my limited experience, I've had a pretty fair gamut of experiences, and none of them I can really say have been bad, or at least, I end up with taco sauce in my eye in a shitty bar on like on a Wednesday night. When I look over at all my all my friends who came and all that, and everyone's just looking disappointed and not wanting to be there. So,
that sounds like post-con stuff.
No, post-con, everyone's got that 1,000-yard stare. It's like, I got to get to the place I feel safe.
Except for Don, he's got the habanero taco sauce on his forehead.
Why does he do that after every show? That's so weird.
The thing about that, like about with comics, is the thing I think is cool about that, like what you're talking about, is like most of the time when we start off working with somebody, Bob and I, like when we went to Tony, I was like, well, what kind of thing do you want to draw? And that's how the most conversations start. Like, well, what do you want to draw? Because like, you don't want to write a script for a guy saying, I really want to draw stuff kind of like high fantasy, and then give them a like sci-fi script where everything's like very techy and like there's lots of, ships and starships and stuff like that to draw, because that's not what they wanted to draw in the very beginning. So they're not going to be as passionate about drawing that at that moment. Like that, it's not that they might not be into that. They might love Star Trek and Star Wars and stuff like that. But if you're like, oh, I got this thing, it's like Star Trek meets like horror movie or something, and they're like, oh, that sounds awesome, but I really want to draw like Conan meets the Herculoids, and you're like, oh, like, so one of the questions we always ask is like, what do you want to draw? Because I feel like that fosters some of the creativity and teamwork, because even though somebody might be able to draw lots of like clean looking hallways and like Star Wars and sci-fi looking stuff, they might not want to draw that at the moment. So kind of have to try to tailor what the artist draws to what you have in your bag at the time of the ideas that you have in your bag. So you say, oh, we've been working on this thing that's like this. Is that something you'd be interested in? And the cool thing about artists, one thing I have to say about artists that makes them cooler than writers is if you give them like, if you toss out 3 or 4 ideas, a lot of artists will be like, I like all of these. I think that's funny. Like I always find that super funny.
I've made that statement before. Yes.
I like all these ideas. Like I would do any of these. And I'm like, pick the one that speaks to you the most. Like, don't just grab something because you think like you like the idea the most. Pick the one that you feel like you would do the best on, and that like speaks to you the most. And I can say that with utmost confidence with Walter. I think that's the reason why METALSHARK BRO did as good as it did. It was because Walter. We gave him 3 different scripts, 3 different ideas. We were like, these are ideas. He's like, all these sound really cool. And I was like, whatever you want to do. Like, these are all first issue scripts. So whatever you want to do. And Bob was with me. He was like, yeah, whatever you want to do, man. And so he read them all, and he came back and he's like, this METALSHARK BRO one is like really funky and really stupid, but I think I really like it a lot. It's dumb enough. It's just dumb enough to work. I think that was the thing he said. So it was weird because I thought he was going to pick a totally different. I was like, I'm betting he's going to pick this other script. And Bob was like, yeah, I think he liked that one too. Cause when he finished that one, he was like, seemed really stoked to do it. And I was like, yeah, just read the other ones first though. Don't just pick the first one. And he read them all and he was like, I liked all of them, but I like this one the most. And I was like, that's crazy. Cause I didn't figure that's the one he would have picked.
Yeah. So. See, there you go. You never know. And that's what, and it's something he wanted to draw because he did such a great job at it.
He added so much. Like without Walter, I don't think it would be what it was, because there was a different artist attached to it who's a colorist for like Invader Zim and stuff for Oni, and like we'd been waiting a while to get pages from him because he'd been so busy doing his other work for of course for money. Mm-hmm. From the Oni Invader Zim comics. So when we finally he got back to us and he had a couple pages, I was like, oh, this is cool. But then he's like, it's gonna take me a while to get a couple more done, but this is where I'm starting at. This looks like this looks like this. And that was fun. We never showed those to Walter. He never got to see what this other artist was doing, because it wasn't like hey, should we show him that? It was like, no, we just let him do what he's going to do, make it his own thing. The other guy walked away from the script because he didn't have enough time. And that was nice of him too, to be coming, because he was being fair to us. Because he's like, I just don't have the time for this as much as I want to do it. So as soon as that happened, we're like, that's cool. Are you cool if we go pitch this to other artists? He's like, yeah, I'm totally cool. That's why I told you I didn't have the time for it. And that's one thing about comics, like I would say too, is like, that's different from being in a band. Like you said, you had a guy that was trying to be in 2 bands at the same time. If people don't have time in comics and they tell you they don't have time, like that's awesome, because then hey, like I'll try to work with you back later on something else. In bands, when you compare the two, that doesn't happen as much. Oh no, I can do both.
It's usually a contentious exit.
Right.
But no, that's awesome, and I could speak from my experience as an artist. Whenever someone's like, "Well, what do you want to draw?" That's like the best question, but also like the worst question on the wrong day. It's like, I don't know, man. What do you got?
Well, the funny thing about that is if you were still at an impasse and I'm like, okay, like, what do you want to draw? And you don't come back with like any ideas, or like, oh man, I like everything. Cause that's an answer we've gotten before too. And it's weird because I think I don't have that perspective because I'm a writer in comics. So it's a different role. It's a weirder role, I'd say. Because a lot of people think we actually letter the books, and I'm like, no, like we just wrote the script. Like everybody else did like the super hard work. Like I'm not trying to downplay it and say like, writing parts of this wasn't hard and writing dialogue's not hard. At times it totally is. But I mean, I feel like everybody else in the comic does just as much, if not more at times, and the artist is like the one who's carrying like the heaviest load. So when you're trying to work out an idea or something like that, like I also say like if you were able to like pick out your 5 most favorite movies, put them on there too, like so like you get a feel for what people are into. Like these are my 5, like these movies are my favorite ones. So if they like give you 5 movies and then they say they want to draw something that's like completely left field of the movies, if you combine some of that stuff to come up with like a totally different idea, or like start mixing stuff together, or genre mashing, or doing whatever, you can always come up with a feasible idea between the artist and yourself that's going to work out for both of you.
Cool. That sounds awesome. I like that approach. I'm going to steal that. Next time I'm trying to figure out what's my next thing.
Well, you said you wanted to write one day, so like the thing.
Well, I'm writing the comic I do now, and I'm writing some other stuff. But yeah, I would like to, have the feeling of like, okay, I did the writing part now. Art Monkey, go draw. Wow me with your wizardry, and because I'm hoping, and I know I will, but just get that the feeling of just like someone taking what you wrote and just seeing the interpretation of it in their eyes. Like I've had like maybe 2 people sketch characters that I've created, and both times I was like, ooh, just giddy, and it's just a sketch or whatever. Like, but I was like, even that I'm like all giddy about, because I'm like, you did, as Mike Norton once told me, it's great to have friends who can draw your characters better than you.
It's funny because when you mentioned METALSHARK BRO, like that's how we didn't know. Like people are like, oh, so you guys kind of knew you had like something really cool here, and I was like, no, we didn't know until like people were just drawing it on the internet, and people are like, oh, it's cool, you paid those people to draw. Like, no, we didn't really commission anyone because we can't afford to. Like we don't have it like that. Like
no, when you
people were just drawing because they liked it,
they
thought it was cool. Man. Like, and that's even better. So that's why we're going to put it in an art book form, because they were nice enough to like go and spend their time drawing it. Like, and it was just nuts because you'd look on the Instagram and there's somebody would hashtag METALSHARK BRO, and like there it is, like up there, METALSHARK BRO, and it's drawn by somebody like, I've never talked to this person before. This person doesn't know me from Adam. It's crazy. Like this person just drawing this character that we made up. And like, that's really cool. Like it's a really weird, but cool thing. Cause I'm like, this is really awesome looking. Like this person like did a great job. And like, there was a whole lot of stuff that came in like that. We were just happy to share it all. Like, from people there's people who were writers who drew it too. We shared theirs too. And they were like, oh, you didn't have to share mine. Mine was just me messing around because I thought it was fun. And I was like, no, that was like, the whole idea is the fact that people think it's fun. And like, we're trying to have fun with it too. So it's great to see that. Like, it's a lot of, it's humbling in a way. Like, it's weird because you don't know quite how to take it. Like, cause you're like, oh, that's super cool that they drew it, but it makes me feel kind of weird because I'm not that important. Like, like that's really awesome that they decided to take the time out of their day to do that. It's really interesting. Like, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, it makes me feel it gives me like all the warm and fuzzies about comics inside.
Well, as someone who was inspired by Metal Shark in their own way, I could say, like, coming from my end of it, it was definitely just like, wow, this is a really fun thing. I'm inspired to do a thing. This is awesome.
Well, you did an awesome piece of art, and you even did a song that's awesome that I direct people to the song all the time. I'm like, dude, you got to hear the song that Don Cardenas did. It's awesome. Like, it's a dope song. Like, you did such a great job with it. And like, you did the thing that I want to bring this up because it's important. You did the thing that we said we do with comics. You did it right there. You were like, what were your favorite metal bands? And like, we named like 3 or 4 and you mixed them all together and made a Metal Shark Bro song out of that. And I was like, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And that inspired me to do a lot of things. That inspired me to track, even though they're like, the guttural satanic vocals, to track vocals for the first time as myself. Like,
and they were great.
And so it was like, that was just a lot of fun to do. And that's, and you shouldn't, not that your reaction to this isn't inappropriate in terms of like people doing the fan art and all that. But it's like, people do fan art because they're inspired and they're happy. And I know there's a small section of people who are expecting, extreme gratitude because they drew your character or whatever. But that's certainly not the case with this or with Metal Shark and all that, because it was just such a fun idea. And like you said, it was just stupid enough to work. And
it's totally stupid, and we knew it was stupid from the get-go, but we were going to do it anyway. And
but
like, it's weird.
Stupid in the way you're like, oh my God, that is so stupid. I love it. It's amazing. And
I'm not sure that we saw it like that. I think we saw it like, this is really dumb and it's making us laugh, so let's just do it and pay money to print these books out like we did like a couple of the things we had done together, Bob and I, and we're like, let's just do it for fun, because we just we have just written something like that was a lot more serious and heavier. So what we needed was like a palate cleanser. Mm-hmm. So when we started being like really silly at that moment, it kind of reminded me of the first thing we had done together, which was called like the Elvis Adventures, which is just this silly. It's not sillier than Metal Shark Bro. There's like a giant kaiju banana. Elvis has like a bedazzled samurai sword named after his mama. Like, it was just us being as ridiculous as we possibly could and still trying to make a story out of it. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing we did. And it was weird because it was a palate cleanser for me from Oathbound. I came from doing like a fantasy Western with Paul because I love Westerns, but I love fantasy stuff. And Bob had just come off of doing a kid's book. So he wanted something that wasn't as kid oriented, and I wanted something that wasn't as serious. So he's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. What do you want to do? And we were just shooting back and forth stupid ideas. And it's exactly how we did with Metal Shark Bro. It's like, we're shooting back stupid ideas, and whoever can make the other one laugh the hardest, that's the idea that wins. So, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm glad that people liked it, because we had a lot of fun doing the book. Was fun. Everything about that book is fun. Even the second one was a lot of fun. Cause it was like, all right, we need this other ridiculous idea here. What do we insert to get to this other plot point we had? And like, we just figure it out and shoot stupid ideas back and forth until the stupidest one won.
Well, the great thing about you and Bob is that, and I think this speaks to other kinds of media. If you look at it, there's things that are on their face either ridiculous or have ridiculous aspects. But when you inject a lot of heart and soul into them, it becomes just like so much greater as something that's just serious or something that's just funny. Like if you could take a show like, you know, Futurama, which has its plenty of ridiculous things, but it has a lot of heart and it has a lot of soul. And you take something like METALSHARK Bro, and it's got this ridiculous premise and all these things, but you guys are clearly putting a lot of heart and soul into it. And that just elevates it to something that's, you know, 50,000 times more endearing than something that's just outrightly ridiculous, outrightly, you know, or outrightly this like outrageous in its own way. So, you know, you guys, you know, shouldn't sell yourself short on, you know, the fact that you were able to channel, you know, a lot of great things into a ridiculous idea, making it just this fantastic thing. Not that you are, but you know.
All I can say is thank you to that, because I don't know what else to say, because I'm not saying it's not awesome. It's a lot of awesome.
No, I'm not saying you're not. I'm not saying you're poo-pooing it at all. I'm just, from my perspective, from a fan perspective, I should say. That's
a friend perspective.
A friend's perspective. Well, I'm both friend, fan. You know, that's how I see it. You know, and I think you guys,
because it came out at the same time as like Murder Falcon did, and like that's a much more serious tone book, and people are like, oh, like, you guys, have you seen this Murder Falcon thing? It's kind of the same thing. It's totally not, but we didn't know that because it was announced while we were doing the METALSHARK BRO Kickstarter, and we looked at that and went, oh man, like Daniel Warren Johnson's doing a book that's like kind of in the same vein. People were bringing that to our attention, and I was like, yeah. I was like, but his is going to be better than ours.
Well, that's like, that
was the joke.
Going back to the beginning of our conversation, that's like comparing The Thing to Big Trouble in Little China. It's like, right, which one's better? No, they're both amazing in their own ways. Like, and they both have these, you know, outrageous elements to them, but they're treated differently. And, you know, it's just two entirely different movies, but they both have these, you know, fantasy, almost sci-fi aspects to them. So, you know, was Murder Falcon better than METALSHARK Bro? I'm not going to say it was, but that doesn't mean they both weren't excellent. So
it would not hurt my feelings if you did say it was. No, but I actually thought that they're both very different, like you said, and like they're going for different things, and it's really funny because like I wasn't expecting Murder Falcon to be as heavy as it is, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but I would say go out and read it if you haven't. It's awesome. It's got heavy subject matter, but like it's handled in a very like cool, tactful way. So like he did such a great job on that. Wherein like ours is not. If you want to have, I would say if you want to have like moments of fun with lots of heart, like Murder Falcon's for you. If you want to just have like lots of fun with like tinges of the heart, like then go read METALSHARK Bro, because like it's tough to make a shark character sympathetic, and people are like, I don't know how you made me sympathize with METALSHARK Bro, but I really enjoyed METALSHARK Bro as a character. Like I felt for him and this and that, and I was like, oh well, like that took us a long time to like grasp as to what we were doing with that. So like it was a fun process because we didn't even know what METALSHARK as a character wanted at first, and then we're like, well, of course he just wants to be a shark again, because being a human's awful. So like being part human's just, it's terrible. Why would you want to do that when you could be free and swim in the ocean and eat license plates? So
well, to put a pin in it, you know, as great as both METALSHARK and Murder Falcon are, Murder Falcon does not have Hamzig. So
true.
Balls in your court, Daniel. What's up, bro? So I've loved chatting with you so far.
It's been great.
Before we wrap up, I have to ask the 3 questions of the show.
Sure.
Comics, coffee, metal. What's doing it for you lately?
Comics wise, have you read the thing I've read that's impacted me the most recently is The Savage Shores?
No, I've heard a lot of amazing things about that though.
It's great. It's like I want to say it's horror, but I don't know if it's as much horror as it. It's a great story. It's basically kind of like it interweaves Eastern, like Indian, from India, folklore with like a vampire myth, and then includes traditional European vampires. It's just a really great story. I really enjoyed that book. It's by Ram V and Sumit Kumar. The art is beautiful. It's just an amazing story. And I think the week before that I finished Dark Red by Tim Seeley and Corin Howell. I like them both. They're both vampire stories. For me, I feel like D Savage Shores resonated more, but I liked the Tim Seeley take on it because it was very John Carpenter. So I would say, depending on what you're in the mood for, if you want to like read something that's a little bit more serious, that has like a lot of mythology and background and history in it, like These Savage Shores is for you. If you want to read something a little more fun, it's kind of like a 80s, 90s horror movie, check out Dark Red.
Awesome. So, coffee, what's keeping you alive lately?
I'm pretty standard on the coffee. I like Death Wish coffee, and like I like it because it's like super strong, and like I drink a lot of coffee black with just some sugar in it. So I go with Death Wish coffee a lot. We also drink this keto coffee. It's called like Rapid Fire Keto Coffee. I really like it because it's kind of creamy in the taste. It's really weird. You don't have to have any creamer in it, and the coffee's still kind of creamy. So it's fun. I like that coffee.
Am I mixing that up with like the bulletproof coffee where you're supposed to like put like cream butter in it or something like that?
Yeah, the one that they have at like Whole Foods. Yeah, the bulletproof one is great. I like that one too. I drink at Heroes every year. There's a Whole Foods right next to it. Before the con, I'll go get a bulletproof. It's really funny because it's creamy as well, without putting any coffee creamer in it. It's creamy automatically. So it's like it's kind of interesting because I go hardcore like black with the coffee, but like some sugar, and every now and then I'll put some cream in. But I think that's the reason why I stick to it. Like when I'm gonna sit down and write, I'll drink like 2 or maybe 3 cups of Death Wish coffee, and like I'll pull an all-nighter and just sit at the computer forever. So
oh, you're the first person to bring up Death Wish. I think most of us haven't gone that far yet. And I've heard conflicting things about the flavor of Death Wish, but
it's very strong. I'll say that.
Well, as with coffee goes, there's so many different roasts now and variations. It's like not just like I like coffee. It's like, well, what do you like coffee? How do you like to make your coffee? Do you do an automatic drip? Do you do pour over? Do you do French press? Like it's become such a thing that it's just kind of interesting hearing what people's approach is. And so far, most people are like, yeah, coffee maker, store-bought coffee, like. Sometimes I'll go fancy.
I'm going to disappoint you with my last answer because you said end metal, right?
Okay.
I haven't really listened to anything new in years. When I listen to music now, this is like really sad, but it's very true. The majority of the music I listen to is like scores and soundtracks on Spotify.
That's perfectly fine. Like we have to, it's not all metal over here all day, when it's, not whatever my 4-year-old wants to listen to. It's, it could be metal. It could be scores and things like that. There's this great heavy metal band, death metal band named God Flesh Apocalypse, or Flesh God Apocalypse, which is great orchestral death metal kind of stuff. But they also release like instrumental versions of all their songs. Mm-hmm. So like if the kids are in the car, the wife's in the car, and they don't necessarily want to hear some death metal vocals, I could just throw that on, and it's just like epic metal instrumentals.
That's awesome. See, like anything instrumental I'll listen to while I write, and it doesn't matter what it is. I just throw the Spotify on, and they'll put up all kinds of things from like Indiana Jones to like the Spider-Man Sam Raimi soundtrack. Yeah. Like as long as it's just music, I don't need any lyrics happening at the time. but like I haven't listened to like actual metal music and like besides the stuff I grew up on. Like, so if I name the stuff I grew up
Go
on,
ahead. Yeah.
like,
What's
that?
What's the stuff you grew up on? What's the
Like Anthrax, Megadeth, Metallica. Like I haven't listened to newer Metallica stuff. The last Metallica thing I heard was a while ago. And I wasn't in the album I heard, I wasn't impressed with the production value. It was Saint Anger.
Oh.
And the production value sounded like they recorded it. And this is no diss on Metallica because like I loved them growing up, but like it sounded like they recorded it in a tin can. So
well, it's that album is like almost intentionally harsh. But yeah, that's a whole thing. That's a whole thing. And their album after that, Death Magnetic, that one almost gets as much hate for the production. Not because it's bad in the same way, it's just because everything was so brick-walled with the waveforms and all that. Everything's just clipping left and right. It's just not great. But their more recent one, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, that one's better.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it. Like, but so like Anthrax, like I heard that they got Joey Belladonna back, and I was almost disappointed.
Yeah, and the past couple albums have been great.
Really?
For All Kings, yeah, just. They've been like, I'm not a Joey Belladonna Anthrax guy, but now his voice is a little bit more weathered.
So you're a John Bush Anthrax guy?
See, I love John Bush's voice, but
me too.
He writes too many damn lyrics for these songs.
He didn't. The weird thing about him in Anthrax, he didn't write any lyrics for Anthrax.
What's that?
He didn't write any lyrics when he was in Anthrax.
He didn't?
No, well, Scott Ian wrote a lot of those lyrics.
Well, then they needed to give those a chance to breathe because I like John's stuff with Armored Saint, but the Anthrax stuff, like, just a lot of great songs, but a lot of them are just like, it just feels the vocals crowd them so much that they could have been a little more sparse with that, and I think the music would have shown a little bit better for me.
See, my favorite Anthrax song of all time is off of the Last Action Hero soundtrack, so it's crazy because Poison My Eyes is probably my favorite Anthrax song ever. That and You Can't Kill What Doesn't Die. Like, I love both of those songs. I think I just like You Can't Kill What Doesn't Die because my favorite metal drummer has always been Charlie Benante, and like,
oh, he's amazing. It's
weird because when you mention that to people, they're like, "Oh, like, he's okay." I'm like, "No, he's dope. He's amazing. He's an amazing drummer." He gets overshadowed a lot by like Vinnie Paul and other drummers. Yeah. I just was kind of like, dude, Charlie Benante is like probably my favorite dude in Anthrax. Like, I've always loved Anthrax because of his drums,
too, which is great.
I haven't listened to them when they got Belladonna back because I was glad when they got rid of him.
Okay.
It sounds super bad. Because I love State of Euphoria. That's probably my favorite all-time Anthrax album, which is why there's a METALSHARK State of Euphoria shirt. Because Walter's like, "What's your favorite metal band?" I was like, probably Anthrax. Like, when I grew up on the big four, like I liked Slayer okay, I liked Megadeth okay, I liked Metallica better than okay, but they were still second to Anthrax for some odd reason. I think it was because Anthrax seemed like they were having a lot of fun and Metallica didn't.
Very true. Metallica was having their fun, but their music was not very fun. I mean, it's hard to grow up and not like appreciate a metal band that does a song about Judge Dredd, you know.
And there's that, and then there's also the fact that they did like I'm the Man and crazy stuff. Like, they just weren't afraid to be themselves and be silly. So I always liked Anthrax for that reason.
I have a couple of Charlie Benante anecdotes, I guess.
Oh, do you?
Well, first was a few years ago, we all went to go see Black Label Society at the House of Blues in Chicago with Down opening.
That's awesome.
And that was a killer show. At the end of the set for end of Down's set, Charlie came on to play drums for one of the songs, and it's like you switched like a tiny little toy hammer with a fucking sledgehammer on drums. Like, the sheer power that this dude was, and granted, it could have been just because he didn't have to play a whole set, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case. That's just how he plays, because it was just like, you know, Thor rolls up and just thunder is just happening from there. And that was just like such an amazing thing. And I was actually really bummed because at the end of the Black Label set, Phil comes out to play I'm Broken with Zach in the band. And I was hoping Charlie would come out to do drums for that, but he didn't. But second thing is I was at Cincy Comic-Con, the one that Tony Moore and his wife were running for a few years. And I actually saw him there, like at the show. Like it was like this smaller like hotel ballroom show or whatever. And I see him like making his way, and I'm like 3 or 4 rows away, and he was headed out the door. But I'm like, that's Charlie fucking Benante. Like what? Like wait, hold on a second. Like, but I didn't have a chance to leave the table, so I'm like, I literally just jumped on Twitter. I'm like, and I tagged him. I'm like, did I just see you at Cincy Comic-Con? He's like, yeah, dude, had to go. Sorry. And I'm like, I got a response. Cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, those are my 2 lame Charlie Benante stories. But yeah, he's awesome. And he's a lot of people don't realize he also wrote a lot of riffs for Anthrax too. Like, so he's a pretty big writer. There's this great series on YouTube called Metal Head to Head from Fuse TV, I think it is. You should search out. Charlie Benante has a great interview. It's like metal people interviewing each other and kind of talking about their craft and stuff like that. So if he's your guy, I would suggest checking that out and, watching that video.
Yeah,
because
I love that guy. Like he's my favorite metal drummer, and it's weird when people like, oh, who's your like all time favorite metal drummer, and they're expecting me to say like Joey Jordison or like like Vinnie Paul or Lars, and I'm like, dude, it's always been Charlie Benante. I don't know why. It's always just been him. And he did not let me down when Anthrax did "We've Come for You All," and he did that the intro to "You Cannot Kill What Doesn't Die" is just like, it's super amazing.
Yeah, I would give the later Belladonna stuff a shot, because his voice isn't really my cup of tea, for the 80s stuff, but again, his voice got a bit more weathered. It's a little bit less. It's a little less 80s, I should say.
I don't hate him. So
it's not that he's bad. It's that style.
Right.
It's just that style is not for me. But I would definitely check
that out. Because like a lot of like Euro metal now, like I try and listen to it, and it's like it's either too operatic or like too clean.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike the clean vocal. Like I think it's awesome. It's just like, when I had to sing, I was never that great of a singer. So it's like, I was just bordering on better than okay. So like when you hear stuff like that and you're like, God, this person like trained for years to be able to do this. But I don't know why I don't like it so much. That's so weird. But
there's a band I really like called Evergrey, and they got some really heavy, riffs and stuff like that, but the singing's all like clean. And you could tell the guy's practiced, he's got skill, but he's definitely not just going full operatic. It's just that there's moments in songs where you're like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing.
Well, see, when you do it with like Iron Maiden, like Bruce Dickinson, I think does it well, because it's not all like super operatic or anything. He's more dramatic in his vocal delivery. Like when he's like, "Feel the dark."
It's the same school as Dio, or even though his style is different, Ozzy, just like their storytelling through their voice, and to varying degrees, then they pull off these things that normal humans can't do. So yeah, that's definitely a vast difference between just someone just kind of, I kind of think of like Iced Earth as one of those bands where it's like they just kind of like, or Dragon Force, like they just kind of go full on all the time, and it's just kind of, yeah, okay.
That's what you want to do.
Not my thing. You guys are great though. You're really good. You've worked really hard, and kudos to your success. But
see, on the same token, I can't go full on death metal all the time either. Like I have a hard time listening to any death metal because I can't understand anything that they're saying. So I'm like, this is tough. It's a tough metal is a tough thing for me in my latter years, because I can deal with you know metal I grew up on, and stuff like that. But like when I try and listen to new stuff now, and someone's like, "Oh, listen to this," and it's like a death metal band, I'm like, yeah, the music's great. I can't handle the vocals. Like the vocals are gonna give me a damn headache. So like that's how I know I'm getting old.
There was around 2000, I was in a community college and I was talking to this guy. He's a Swedish guy, and he'd been in America for about a dozen years or so. And he was telling me about all these like bands and all these things. And he's like, I'm like, well, yeah, that's not really my kind of metal, but he's like, well, I'll burn you a couple CDs and you can check them out. I'm like, oh, that'd be great. I'll give you this, back when you had to burn CDs. I'm like, oh, I'll buy some CDs. You can go burn them for me. That'd be great. Like the class again was like 2 days later. He comes in with 27 CDs, all handwritten track notes or track listings and stuff like that. I'm like, what? Like, what are you giving me right now? And he's like, oh, no, these are just my copy. Apparently this guy, he would get like a CD. He would make like 3 copies of it. Then he'd put the original in the packaging, and he would like adhere it to his wall. So his like wall supposedly was like his entire like music room was covered in CDs.
It's crazy.
So he's like, yeah, I just pulled something, and I'm like, so I had these 27 CDs of all these different bands, from stuff like Death to Jagdpanzer to local death metal bands and progressive metal bands and stuff like that. And I had it for like a couple years. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with all these damn CDs, because my ear wasn't attuned to it at the time. So I ended up like giving them away to a few people that I met later on. And I've forgetted that ever since, because now I'm kind of like, oh, I kind of like some of this stuff now. I wish I had that band. And I'm trying to think of bands that I was listening that were on there and the CDs that I'm like, let me see if I can try to find them and stuff like that. So death metal is it's definitely an acquired taste. I'm getting more acquired to it as I get older, apparently. But yeah, there's definitely a line to where it's like, this is more noise than music to me. And that's
Correct,
not to disparage
it's the high pitch.
what they're doing. That's just not mine. That's not my thing. Like, go do it. Do your thing, man. Just not me.
The high pitched guitar with the low vocals, like
yeah,
it just doesn't.
The tin can, production, and like, like the Cradle of Filth style vocal, and it's like that kind of stuff. It's just like, it's not my thing, man. But that's cool.
Right.
I'm always happy to point like other metal stuff. Like if you're ever like, hey, Don, what's kind of like, because I'm kind of getting a feel for your interest. So if you're ever interested in hearing some metal bands that I think you might dig, let me know, and then I'll send you some links. Because yeah, there's a lot of great stuff coming out. Even like Machine Head, like their later releases are like really great. So
I'm not shocked that they got really great, because you could tell in the 90s that they were trying to find themselves. So I feel like by now, I think that Rob Flynn probably found the sound he was looking for back then.
The podcast, a couple podcasts ago, by the time this one comes out, I've never listened to Machine Head before. So I decided to do a whole deep dive. So I kind of go through album by album, like my thoughts and stuff like that. And I was very happy that I did that, because there's a lot of great stuff there. And especially with the later stuff and all that. But, I'm more favor the mid to later 90s stuff, I think. But
okay, because I stopped listening to them. Like, God, I guess the album it's like a blue and orange album. I got one more of that where their song on there that I really liked was "Descend the Shades of Night." It was pretty good. But like Supercharger, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this album.
Well,
but
that is literally like, up until this most recent one, Catharsis, that is like the worst one.
Okay.
And it's not that there's not decent things on that album. It's just as a whole, no.
I'm with you.
I really liked the one before that, The Burning Red. That was really good.
It's a good album, yes.
And the one after that, let me see. which one was that? Oh yeah, the kind of comeback through the ashes of empires. That's kind of like where they started finding the new sound that they're doing.
Okay.
Or at least kind of like all the influences he was throwing in there coalesced. And from there, it's just up until this most recent one, which isn't like terrible, but it's kind of like, oh, he's doing a lot of other different things, like almost like pop punky things in some sections, like, but that's something I kind of respect about the guy too. Like, he's like, I'm going to do what I want to do, and this is what I'm feeling. This is the influences I'm feeling, and this is how I'm going to write.
Yeah, because I remember when Burn My Eyes came out, like they were struggling, like they got compared to Pantera a lot. And we actually played a show with them in Richmond, Virginia. And Rob Flynn was super, super cool, super nice about everything. And I was like, dude, I used to listen to you when I sucked at skateboarding and you were the guitar player for Violence. And he started laughing. He thought that was hilarious. I was like a kid. I was like 9, trying to pretend like I could skateboard, and couldn't skateboard very well at all. But I would try. And I remember listening to you guys and like Anthrax and like a bunch of other like thrash bands. And so it was amazing. I was like, whatever happened to the dudes in Violence? And he's like, Shane's doing roofing, and he told me what they were doing, and I was like, I'm just not sure. It's almost funny to me because I draw a parallel to that in like pro wrestling. Because when you hear about what wrestlers that you grew up with are doing now, like the franchise Shane Douglas runs like a Shoney's in Georgia somewhere or something crazy like that. And I was like, really? That's crazy. So
you always, whenever I think about these older bands and stuff like that, I always just kind of like, well, I hope they're at least doing well. Like, at least they're successful in what they're doing. Like, oh, so-and-so, the drummer for, necrophantic dysplasia is an accountant in, Albuquerque. And it's like, oh, well, I hope he's successful.
Right. It's funny. It's funny because like Jason Newsted left Metallica and nobody's ever, like, he played a couple times with Ozzy, but then after that, like, I'm like, what has he done since then? Has he done anything?
Oh yeah.
Oh really?
First off, Newsted's my dude. So after he left Metallica, they released the Echo Brain album, which sucks. Not that it's a bad album, but sucks that the guitar player and the drummer that were in that band kind of like went away. And nothing really happened because they were talented guys, and it was a pretty decent, like alternative rock album. He did some Ozzy stuff. He joined Voivod for a while. He did a couple albums with them. He did a lot of like guest spots and stuff and doing things, and he had his own solo project called Newsted a few years ago, which was put out an album and an EP, which were really good, and I really enjoyed those, where he's writing the songs and singing and stuff. But then he tried to like take that band out. He had like Mike Mashock from Stained and as his one of his guitar players and stuff like that. And while the band I think was relatively successful, like he was still pumping a lot of money into it to try to, because he was paying everybody and taking care of everything. And that coupled with like his mom getting really sick and eventually passing away, so he's kind of like doing this acoustic, kind of like not necessarily jam band, but like this acoustic revolving door band thing that he does dates a few times a year and stuff for. I'm hoping he returns to metal because I really like that Newsted project, but I get it. I'm
gonna have to check that out because the weird thing was like I thought he just dropped off the base. Like he like
no.
11 times like peace out, I made my money.
He also did that Rockstar show, Rockstar Supernova, and he did like a band with Gilby Clarke and Tommy Lee, and they picked a singer. And then
who'd they pick for the singer?
Oh God, it was some emo.
Because I remember this show because they had like Evan Seinfeld and Scott Ian and like Ted Nugent in the same band, and like you don't think that band would ever work or whatever. Yeah, that was that first band. Oh God, what was that band? I don't know. But yeah, it was some emo dude. I don't know.
But they that came and went, and I think while they're on tour, Newstead like hurt his shoulder trying to catch a bass amp or something that was falling, which I kind of supposedly was a real injury, but at the time people were like, he probably saw like, yeah, this is shitty and sucks. I'm gonna get out of here. But yeah, that was God. And then there was, I'm getting sidetracked. I'm thinking about that Rockstar show because they had the NXS one and all that. But yeah, that was. Oh no, you're thinking the Ted Nugent one. I think that was a VH1 thing.
It was
Supergroup or whatever.
Yes,
and I think they just called themselves Supergroup, something really lame like that.
I can't even remember what the name was, but Nugent like had all these like terrible ideas, and like the rest of them are like.
Wasn't it Sebastian Bach, Ted Nugent?
Sebastian Bach's an incredibly talented dude for singing. He's a great singer.
No,
like
yeah, and his voice still holds up today. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's just weird because like he was at a show that when I was in a band, we played in New York. He was there in a white fringe leather jacket with cowboy boots on, and it's in New York. The dude lives in Jersey. So it was really weird for me because I'm from New York and we were playing kind of like metal, but not like metal that he liked. And like he gave us devil horns. Like he liked it, I guess. He was in the club. It was pretty crazy though, because I was like, is that Sebastian Bach? He's really tall. Like, because I mean, I'm not super tall, but I'm not short. So like when I looked at him, I was like, holy cow, that guy's really tall. He's like 6'2" or 6'3", I would say. I'm 5'11", so I'm not short. I just look short when I stand next to Bobby because he's also 6'3". So it's weird. It's weird because I was like, oh, I didn't think he was that tall of a dude. But like he stood out. He had a white fringe jacket on with these like weird snakeskin cowboy boots, and I'm like, dude, 1980s, way over, my friend. It's done. But I thought it was hilarious because I was like, he's that dude that didn't give up on it. He's still
living it.
Yeah. And I was amazed. I was like, well, that's awesome. It's awesome like that he's like going to stick by it. Like, so that's cool.
All right, Kevin. I don't think we're going to top that.
No, you're not. No.
So thank you for coming on. I had a great chat with you. Can you let the people know where they can find you, what they should be looking out for? Sure.
On Twitter, it's at KEVIN_CUFFE, CUFFE. And on Instagram, it's the_right_cuff. And on Facebook, it's just my name. I'm just real weird about adding people on Facebook just because I have to like wait a while and look at your profile, make sure you're not doing anything weird or homophobic
these
or
days
racist.
You kind of have to. Like it's, yeah, I've weeded out people in my own family at this point. So.
Yeah, I totally screen my Facebook, but everything else I don't. So I always warn people that I screen my Facebook. I try to because like there's actual pictures of like, my kid and girlfriend and stuff like that up there. So like I try not to expose them to weird stuff that's going on in comics or stuff like that if I can help it. So the best place is probably Twitter.
All right. And METALSHARK BRO Volume 2 is coming out in June?
In June 17th. It'll be in your local comic shops. And the order code is, let me find that because I don't know it off the top of my head.
You should, Kevin.
I should, but like Diamond was shut down.
Next to your social security number, you need to know your Diamond order code.
It was shut down for like 2 months. So then I had it memorized at first and then I forgot it. It is the number from previews is APR. Oh, it's loading. APR 202024.
All right.
And that's for the single issue. And then the trade will follow like 1 month after that, just as the first volume of METALSHARK did. It was a single issue release and then the trade.
All right. Sounds awesome. That's from Scout Comics?
Yes, both of them are from Scout. Yeah, so you can go to www.scoutcomics.com as well. And I know if you order from there, I don't know if they're still doing it, but they'll give 50% of the profits to your favorite local comic shop. So
even better. All right, Kevin.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me
It's been
on.
a blast. Thanks again for coming on. And seeing as how it's past midnight here and past 1 a.m. by you, I think we need to get our asses off the internet and get some work done and go to bed.
Thanks, Don.
All right, thank you, man. Thanks again for listening to the Comics Coffee Metal Podcast.